Last week, we understood the basic concepts of financial planning, uh, where we have found that to build a good financial plan, one should have a strong foundation. And what are all those four things which are required for a strong foundation? Number one is an emergency fund. Number two is life insurance. Number three is health insurance. And the fourth one is the critical illness care. Now let us discuss all these things one by one in a series of videos. Today we are going to discuss about an emergency fund. Now friend, emergency fund is the most basic thing which comes at the top priority of any financial plan. We will discuss emergency fund by answering three questions. Number one, why an emergency fund is required? Number two, what is the amount of emergency fund that one should have? And number three, what are the financial instruments and products where these funds should be invested? So now let us come to the question number one, why an emergency fund is required. Friends, an unforeseen event or an unanticipated emergency can come into anyone's life at any point of time. And what are the things which are considered under these kind of emergencies? Number one, some of your family member might have an accident or some kind of medical emergency. Number two is you may lose your job if you are a salaried person and suddenly your cash flow stops and you may not find your new job for about 6 or 12 months. Number three, if your son or a daughter is living abroad and suddenly he may require your help and suddenly you may have to plan for a foreign travel. Or number four, or your near and dear ones may ask for some money for their emergency when they have not planned for the emergency fund. So under these kind of situations, if you are already having a good amount of emergency fund, then you don't have to dip into your other investments which you have planned for your fulfilling your other goals. So now let us come to question number two. How much emergency fund is required? It should be a sum of A plus B plus C. Now let us come to A. A constitutes your living expenses for next 6 to 12 months, plus you add all your equated monthly installments into that, and if you are doing some systemic investment plans in the mutual funds, you add that also into it. So this constitutes your part A. Now what is part B? Part B is any one-time expense coming in next 2 years. This could be a repair or a painting of your house, or a down payment of your car, or if you plan some family holiday. So these three things constitute about part B. And the part C constitutes an actual fund which is required for an unforeseen event or unanticipated emergency. As we discussed earlier, it could be either a medical emergency or a family accident or a sudden foreign travel, so and so. So these kind of emergencies can come at any time and you should be prepared for that. Now coming to the third question, where you should park your emergency fund. Now friends, you are not going to keep this fund in your locker or a bank account, right? So whatever financial instrument you choose to put your emergency fund should fulfill two criteria. Number one, the money should be liquid at all times and you should be able to encash that money at a very short notice, say within a day or a two. And number two, second condition is that the financial instrument where you have parked your emergency fund should not be volatile in nature, so that when you actually require that amount, if that particular instrument is suddenly at very low levels, you have to withdraw your money at a huge loss. Like, you cannot park your money into the equities for an emergency fund. Just think about a situation if during a March 2020, when the corona came, and if you suddenly required an emergency fund, the Sensex had crashed from 42,000 to 27,000. So equities are not a good tool to park an emergency fund. So what are these instruments? Number one, first and foremost, is the liquid fund and some of the low duration funds. And number two is banked fixed deposits, but which are not having a lock-in period. Like 5 years bank FDs for tax saving purpose, you cannot keep these as an emergency fund. Now, beside these two instruments, there are two other instruments which are not actually meant for an emergency fund, but it can be of some help to you. Number one is your credit card, and number two, if you have some gold coins and bars at your home, you can in emergency you can encash them and use for an emergency. So now friends, we are coming to the end of our session, wherein I have explained you about an emergency fund. And some of you may find it very boring to create an emergency fund, but let me tell you friends that the importance of emergency fund one will only understand when the real emergency strikes. So friends, if you have found this video to be informative, kindly subscribe to my channel Zero to Zillion. You may forward this video to your near one and dear ones. And thank you very much, and bye bye.